Welcome to the training from Solutions IRB on international studies. Today, presenters on this training are our IRB chair, Dr. Ine O'Reilly, one of our reviewers, Ron Wallace, myself, I am the lead administrator, Cora Crawford, and one of our other administrators, Mackenzie Long. So the purpose of this training, while not all inclusive, the following presentation is really intended to call attention to some of the common areas that are typically missed during submission in the review process. The intention of the presentation is to call your attention to these so that your study can be reviewed as quickly as possible and also be as cost effective for you, so you're not having to pay for consultations and reiteration fees. Some of the required documentation for submission that are typically missed for international studies are local and government approvals. And we really do need these. You have to have them in order to go into these countries and conduct research on their citizens. We need site permission agreement letters if you're doing something in clinics and schools, things like that. We need data usage agreements for those secondary data studies. If you're collecting data from anybody, we need to see those. Funding contracts, whether government, a grant, federal, anything like that, we do need to see those contracts. And we also need to see the scope of work included in those contracts. And also a lot of these international studies, you have enumerators going out and conducting these studies for you. So we need to have that contract with these enumerators.
Some other required documentation that we're looking for in these international studies would be sample data matrix. This is typically seen either in a Word format or an Excel sheet that kind of lays out the points of data that you're going to be collecting. We also are looking for data collection instruments. These are your surveys, focus group, and interview scripts. We need these in English as well as any other language that's going to be included in your study submission. Document titles will need to match what is mentioned in your application for easy reference for your review team. We're also looking for consent forms in English as well as all other languages that will be used in the participant group in your study. Even if you're only doing this in another language, we still will need the English version as well to review. We're also looking for recruitment materials and scripts in English and any other languages that are going to be used. This could look like a social media ad, a flyer, something that's going to be sent out. It could be a recruitment email script. So we're looking for that, as well as if a language other than English is going to be used in any of the documentation. We're going to need a translation attestation. Some things that we're looking for in this attestation would be the document names that are translated, whether it's a consent form, recruitment material, and so on. The translator's name and signature, and an attesting statement that it is an accurate translation. We also prefer that this is notarized, but it is not required. The last document piece we're looking for is a COVID-19 mitigation plan when applicable. When you're going to be face-to-face with subjects or your enumerators are, we would like to see that plan to ensure that the participants are being cared for safely to guard for COVID-19.
In the application, we're looking specifically that if your study is an international study, so it's not being conducted in the United States, you need to choose the international category when you are first submitting. You'll need to provide all of the details for the study. Keep in mind that when it is looked at by a reviewer, all they have is the application. They don't have all the background knowledge that you yourself have. So write your application as if you're explaining it to somebody for the first time, because indeed you are. And that's all that we're going to go by. That application and your documents are what we have to review for the study. Keep in mind that whatever documents you submit, whether it's an interview, a data matrix, those things need to be in alignment and match up with what you have in the application. So if you state that you're doing surveys in the application, yet all we have are open-ended questions and an interview schedule that's out of alignment. So make sure that that doesn't happen. Make sure that the participant activities, the time involved, compensation amount, even the title of the study, make sure that it is the same across all documents. Describe your recruitment and consent methods clearly. Be sure that when you're talking about this, you're answering the questions who, what, when, and how, and give us a full description of exactly what's going to happen. Make it clear if the same survey instrument will be used multiple times. So in a pre-test, post-test fashion, or if you will be using different instruments at different points during the study. Be sure that compensation amounts are clear. And this is especially important in work in foreign countries. You need to compare both to the US dollar and to the daily wage of the region. Please be sure to clarify how your enumerators are going to be trained and include their training materials, since this is the only documentation that we'll have regarding what you've told those people to do and how to do it. On your consent forms, make sure that the study title is listed at the top and that it aligns exactly with the title in our system and on all of your other supporting documents. Often it's really important that the title and the consent, the title and the study match what you have in the grant application. So the grant application should often be the document that guides what the title is. Always include 2 forms of contact for the PI on the consent form. This is generally phone with country code and email. Describe fully what participation in the study will consist of. Again, this has to align with your application and all supporting documents. And this is going to be how the subjects know what they will be doing. So this needs to include adequate description. Give the expected duration of subject participation, both over the life of the study and then also in relation to each task. So if they're going to do surveys 3 times, each survey will take 15 minutes. Your participation should amount to approximately 1 hour, something along those lines. Provide information concerning compensation, type, amount, and how and when it will be distributed. So not all compensation has to be monetary compensation. Other forms of compensation can be given. Include risks and benefits of the study for the participant, and keep in mind that loss of confidentiality should always be listed as a risk for any study. Clearly explain how the participant can leave or withdraw from the research study. Things like email or call co-investigator or PI, because both email and phone number are required. If there's ever a point where participants can no longer withdraw, so say after data collection or, October of this year, let them know that. In some cases, you'll be taking their data and then de-identifying it. Well, once data is de-identified, there's no way to reasonably withdraw that from the study. So they should know, if you want to withdraw from the study, you need to let us know by the conclusion of your interview, something along those lines. You must include a statement similar to the following. If you have questions about your rights as a research subject, you may contact Solutions IRB at, and then it lists, our phone number with the country code and our email. The contact information for Solutions IRB should always be listed below the study team's contact information, because very often the questions will be for you and not for the IRB. So we don't want subjects just to use the first email that they see or the first phone number and end up contacting us, when really they have a question that's more appropriate for the PI or member of the study team to answer. Some consents require that other elements be included. Again, it's dependent upon the study. So describe how the participant will be informed of new findings if they develop during the research study. And this can relate to the participant's willingness to continue in the research. Very often this is more common in medical studies. Clinical studies. Inclusion and exclusion criteria should be included in the consent form, again, for all clinical and medical studies, and provide a statement that researchers retain the right to terminate subject participation without regard to participant consent at any time from the study should it be deemed necessary. This doesn't just apply to clinical studies. This can be put into any study where it's deemed either necessary or appropriate. There are some administrative elements to keep in mind on the consent forms. They need to be reading grade level appropriate for the study's target population. We use a general guideline of grade 8, but since you will be working in foreign countries, you'll need to justify the reading or understanding level if the consent is going to be read to the subjects. Microsoft Word has a Fleisch-Kincaid readability statistic that gives reading levels for a document. And keep in mind, one of the easiest ways to lower the reading level without changing meaning is to simply use words that have fewer syllables. For example, use the term payment rather than compensation. Use layperson's terms rather than scientific terms. Solutions IRB has to stamp all consent forms, and this stamp is placed on the bottom of each page. So please allow 1.5-inch margin at the bottom so that we're not stamping over the wording of your consent.
Some tips from the administrators. So first, it is really helpful if you address all of the revisions before submitting them back to the reviewer. This ensures that there's not miscommunication, reiteration fees. Another thing is we need you to provide clean and track change versions of all of the documents that had revisions on them. The track change version so that our reviewers can easily see what was changed, and then also the clean version so that, especially for the consent form and the protocol, those are stamped. The other ones, we just have to have the clean version on file for auditing purposes. Throughout the application, there is a comments button. Your reviewer will provide comments with the revisions. In that area, you are able to reply to those comments directly with that button. So it's really helpful just to see the communication that went on regarding a specific revision. If you are unable to address a revision, please provide justification and note why you are not able to provide that revision or address it. This again ensures that there's no confusion and no back and forth as to why it wasn't previously addressed. Also, remember, anyone looking at the application should be able to quickly see what is happening. This is also the only permanent record of the study with us. It must be very clear and self-contained. If your study is audited, the written record is all the auditor will have. We're also not able to say, please see the protocol or please see this document for more information. All of your information about your study must be contained in your application. For all of your study material, please provide it as individual documents. So if you have an entrance exit survey or a pre and post interview scripts with different populations, please provide these as individual documents for administrative purposes. The same goes for consent forms. We need each type of consent for different populations, different types of tasks or things that participants are doing as individual documents. Again, administrative purposes, they have to be stamped individually.
From the perspective of the reviewer, I want to touch upon a few things that we are looking for in the application. And some of these will have some overlaps with things that have already been mentioned, but I just want to highlight the importance of these items to the reviewers. When you are writing your application sections where you're describing the study, make sure you're focusing on what is actually going to occur in the study. Try to avoid any references to other activities that are not part of the study, either in the past or future, as these can lead the reviewer to believe they are part of the study. When a reviewer sees mention of other activities that are occurring, they are going to come back and ask, why is that not showing up in the protocol description or things of that nature? So if you do see a reason to mention something that's happened in the past, make sure that you clearly state that this is not related to the study, rather it's just a bit of background information. You want to avoid adding on any additional information or activities that might fall into the category of nice to know information. We will occasionally see studies where the researchers will, since they're going to be on site and they're gathering information, they think it might be nice to tack on some additional information that wasn't part of the approved protocol with the site or funding agency. And we as the IRB are not able to approve those. They have to align with what was approved by the granting authority and or the foreign government. So make sure you avoid any of the nice to know type additions. On a similar point, the study protocol must match the description that has been approved by the study sponsor in any funding agreements and or any of the memorandum of understandings that have been provided with the foreign country. We will need some type of governmental approved letter stating that the research team does have permission to conduct the study in that country. So the types of letters that will work vary. It's just we need something from an agency or authority within that country stating that you have approval to do this research in that country. This was touched upon before, but again, from the researcher perspective, we do look at the methodology that's being used. And we have to ensure that the methodology that you have identified that you will be using aligns with the types of data collection instruments that you have provided to us to review. So for example, as was mentioned earlier, if you are doing a quantitative methodology, but you're only providing us with open-ended interview questions, that is not going to align. You want to make sure the instruments you're using for data collection are aligned with the methodology that you have identified. When you are providing the attestations of translations into English or from English into a foreign language, we understand that sometimes the translator you're using is of the foreign language. And so they will submit to you the translation attestation in a foreign language. We at the IRB are not fluent in the various languages around the world. So for that reason, in those situations, we are requesting that you provide us with a translated version of that attestation when that is the case. Again, to reemphasize, when you're using enumerators, we need specific details about how those individuals are being trained or have been trained in ethical issues with human subjects and research. It's very much like how we look at your research study team to make sure that everyone on that team has had the correct type of training in the topic of human subjects and research, we need to know that's also being accomplished with the enumerators. So please provide us with the specific types of training those individuals will receive. When you're going to a location that is potentially has individuals of authority, for example, teachers in schools, village leaders, you may need permission from specifically the village leaders to go into that area. However, you need to avoid having these individuals involved in recruitment and or obtain the consent, because since these people are in a position of authority, we could hit a situation where coercion occurs. So try and find a way where you can work around to get that type of recruitment and consent performed by someone other than those individuals in authority positions. When you're dealing with a potentially vulnerable population, and by this I'm talking about females, children, immigrants, refugees, it could be prisoners in a foreign country, anything of that nature, and the country in which you're doing the study has a history of oppressive acts or war, or currently has a war going on, then we are going to require a letter from that government stating they will not have access to nor request to study raw data. A letter from the funding authority will not suffice. We are going to need a letter from someone in the government that has the authority to confirm to us that they will not be requesting to see this raw data. If they can get a hold of the raw data, we have a risk that those individuals, that information could be used against them. So we have to take this extra measure in these situations. Be prepared for a higher level of scrutiny and review when your study is involving one of these potentially vulnerable populations. We do this with studies in the US, but we especially do it with studies that are happening in foreign countries. Your PI, or at least one of the co-PIs, should have some type of educational background that aligns with the study subject area. So for example, if you're going in and you're looking at the educational systems of a country, but your PIs all have backgrounds in economics or mathematics, that's a misalignment. We need at least someone at the PI or co-PI level that has an educational background that aligns with the study subject area. And then one final point, we do expect that the PIs that are named on the study are going to be actively involved in the study and should be prepared to respond directly to any reviewer questions when requested. We do this, we're not saying that the PI has to be running the study on a day-to-day basis. However, what we are saying, they need to be cognizant of what's going on and be able to communicate to us what's going on in the study. We're doing this just to ensure we don't have any figureheads who are sitting in the PI position. The role of a PI is to be involved and understand the study.
Any additional questions on an international study you're going to be working on, do not hesitate to reach out. You can reach us at reviews@solutionsirb.com or by phone at 855-226-4472. Thank you.